The anniversary card sat on the counter, still in its crisp, white envelope. My husband's text message glowed on my phone, a single, sterile sentence that made my heart feel like a stone. Something's come up at work. Have to fly out tonight, so sorry, baby. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. The little suitcase emoji he'd added at the end felt like a deliberate piece of cruelty. Our reservations were for 8 o'clock. The table by the window, the one where he'd first told me he loved me. I had a new dress hanging on the back of the door, its silk fabric whispering promises of a perfect evening. Our 5th anniversary. I typed back a simple, "Okay. Be safe." What else was there to say? Arguing wouldn't bring him home. I knew his work was demanding, his position required travel. But tonight, of all nights, a knot of disappointment tightened in my stomach. I told myself it didn't matter. We could celebrate when he got back. I'd save the dress. We'd go to the restaurant next week. But it did matter. The silence in our apartment was suddenly huge. It pressed in on me, amplifying the soft tick of the clock on the wall. Each second felt like a small judgment. I walked over to the counter and picked up the card. My handwriting looked foreign, too cheerful. To the love of my life, Mark. 5 years down, forever to go. Inside, I'd written a long, heartfelt note, quoting a line from the song we danced to at our wedding. A melody I could almost hear now, faint and mocking. I slid the card back into its envelope and left it on the polished granite, a tiny white tombstone for our evening. Later that night, I was scrolling mindlessly through my phone, trying to numb the ache of being alone. A friend had tagged me in a group photo from a few weeks ago. I smiled, then tapped on her profile to see her other pictures. That's when I saw it. She had just posted a story. A picture from her friend's feed, someone I didn't know. The caption was bubbly. "My girl Sarah is living the dream. Look at that view." The view was from a balcony. A familiar balcony, with white railings and a breathtaking panorama of the ocean at sunset. A view I knew like the back of my hand. It was from the Azure Vista Hotel, our honeymoon hotel. My breath caught in my throat. And standing on that balcony, leaning against the railing with a champagne flute in his hand, was my husband. Mark. He wasn't alone. A woman with long, blonde hair was beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. Her hand was intertwined with his. She was laughing, her face tilted up towards his. He was smiling down at her, a soft, intimate smile I hadn't seen on his face in years. A smile that used to be mine. The world went quiet. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant city traffic, it all faded into a dull, high-pitched ringing in my ears. I felt cold, a deep, cellular cold that started in my bones and spread outwards. His work trip. The woman, Sarah, was wearing a thin, white robe. One of the plush, monogrammed robes from the hotel. I remembered that robe. I remembered how soft it felt against my skin after a long day of swimming in the ocean. I remembered Mark wrapping me in it, his arms around me, whispering that this was our place. Forever. I zoomed in on the photo until the pixels became a blurry mess of color. But there was no mistaking it. The watch on his wrist was the one I'd given him for his 30th birthday. The way he stood, one hand in his pocket, was quintessentially him. He was there, in our spot. With her, on our 5th anniversary, the betrayal wasn't just a single act. It felt like a calculated assassination of our entire history. He hadn't just cheated on me, he had taken something sacred and desecrated it. He had taken our most precious memories and handed them to someone else. My fingers were trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. I took a screenshot, the small click of the camera sounding like a gunshot in the silent room. Why did I do that? To prove I wasn't crazy? To have evidence for a fight that I suddenly knew I would never have with him. A new text message from him lit up my screen. Just landed. Hotel is okay. Wish you were here. I stared at the words until they swam before my eyes. The casual lie was more painful than the picture. It was a testament to how little I meant. He didn't even have the decency to be a good liar. He was lazy. He was arrogant. He assumed I was a fool. Maybe I was. I didn't reply. I just sat there on the sofa, the phone clutched in my hand, the image of him and her burned onto the back of my eyelids. The new dress on the door seemed to mock me. The uneaten anniversary cake in the fridge felt like a lead weight in my gut. The entire life I thought I had built felt like a stage set, and I was the only one who didn't know the play was over. That night, sleep was a stranger. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, On the balcony? In the room? In the bed that was supposed to be ours? Did he order the same room service we did? Did he point out the constellations to her from that balcony the way he did for me? Did he play our song for her? The questions were a form of self-torture, but I couldn't stop them. Each one peeled back another layer of my denial, revealing the raw, wounded truth beneath. The next morning, the sun streamed through the windows with an infuriating cheerfulness. I hadn't moved from the sofa. My body ached with a strange combination of exhaustion and adrenaline. My phone buzzed again. It was my mom. I ignored the call. Then my best friend, Jessica. I ignored her too. How could I speak? What would I say? Mark didn't just cheat on me. He took his mistress to the place we got married. He's probably sleeping with her on the same pillow I once cried happy tears on. The shame was a physical thing. It felt like a heavy cloak, smothering me. I felt not just betrayed, but profoundly, deeply stupid. How had I not seen it? The late nights at the office. The hushed phone calls he'd take in the other room. The sudden obsession with his appearance, the new gym membership, the expensive cologne he'd started wearing. The signs had all been there, like little red flags I'd cheerfully ignored, telling myself I was being paranoid. I wanted to trust him. I had built my world on the foundation of that trust. And now the foundation was gone. I was in freefall. For 2 days, I existed in a fog. I moved from the sofa to the bed and back again. The anniversary card on the counter seemed to watch me, a constant reminder of my naivete. Mark's texts kept coming. Short, empty updates. Long day of meetings. The weather is amazing here. Can't wait to be home. Miss you so much. Each message was a small, sharp stab. He was building an alternate reality for me, a flimsy narrative of a dutiful husband on a business trip, while he lived his real life with her. I felt like a ghost in my own home. I'd walk past our wedding photos in the hallway and feel nothing but a hollow echo of the girl in the picture. She was so happy, so certain. She had no idea she was smiling next to a stranger. I started to look back, re-examining every memory. Was he thinking of someone else on our last vacation? Did he ever really love me, or was I just a comfortable habit? The questions spiraled, pulling me down into a dark place of self-doubt. I wasn't just grieving a marriage. I was grieving the person I thought I was, a loved, respected wife. I felt excluded from my own life. On the third day, a package arrived. It was a small, flat box. I opened it numbly. Inside was a framed photo from our honeymoon. It was of the two of us on that exact balcony at the Azure Vista. We were young, tanned, and deliriously happy. He was kissing my cheek, and my eyes were closed in a moment of pure bliss. Underneath, a small engraved plaque read, "Our place, always." It was his anniversary gift to me. He must have ordered it weeks ago. The irony was so cruel, so grotesquely painful, that a laugh escaped my lips. It was a broken, ugly sound. I sank to the floor, clutching the frame, and finally I cried. It wasn't a loud, theatrical cry. It was a silent, gut-wrenching sob that came from a place so deep inside me I didn't know it existed. The tears just streamed down my face, dripping onto the glass protecting the image of two people who no longer existed. He had planned this. He had ordered this gift, knowing full well he was going to be in that exact spot with another woman on the day I received it. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a psychological game. He was mocking my love, my trust, my faith in him. Did he get some kind of thrill from it? Did he and Sarah laugh about the stupid wife at home, opening her sentimental gift while they drank champagne in the room she paid for half of? The thought made me sick. I put the photo frame face down on the floor. I couldn't look at it anymore. I couldn't look at her face, my face, so full of a love that was being actively, viciously betrayed. The fog of grief began to thin, replaced by something else. A cold, quiet clarity. He didn't just think I was a fool. He was counting on it. He was counting on me to be the good, quiet wife who would either never find out or who would be too broken to do anything about it if I did. He thought he knew me. He thought I was weak. For years, I had made myself smaller to fit into his world. I'd given up a promotion so I wouldn't outturn him. I'd moved cities for his job. I'd hosted endless dinners for his colleagues, smiling until my face ached, playing the part of the supportive, unambitious wife. I had built my life around his, and he had taken that life and set it on fire. For what? for a cheap thrill with a woman who probably didn't even know his favorite color or the story behind the small scar above his eyebrow. The pain was still there, a massive, gaping wound in my chest. But underneath it, a tiny ember of anger began to glow. Not hot, explosive rage. It was a different kind of anger. It was cold and it was patient. It was the anger of a person who has finally been pushed too far. I stopped crying. I washed my face with cold water, looking at my own reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were puffy, my skin pale. I looked like a victim. I felt like a victim. But was that all I was going to be? I thought about the hotel. The Azure Vista, our place, the scene of the crime. He had taken it from me. He had tainted it with his lies and his infidelity. He had turned a symbol of our love into a symbol of my humiliation. But what if it didn't have to be? What if I could take it back? Not for us. There was no us anymore. For me, the idea was small at first, almost nonsensical, a flicker of defiance in the darkness. He would be there for the rest of the week. His text had said so. Stuck here until Friday, big project. I looked back at the screenshot on my phone. The woman, Sarah, had a public profile. A few clicks was all it took. Her feed was a monument to narcissism. Pictures of her at expensive restaurants, on private jets, with designer bags. And there, posted just an hour ago, was a new picture. A close-up of 2 champagne glasses clinking together. The location tag was clear as day. The Azure Vista Hotel. The caption read, Room 1201, a room with a view and a man with a plan. Room 1201, our honeymoon suite. Of course. The specificity of it felt like another deliberate twist of the knife. He didn't just take her to our hotel, he took her to our exact room. The place where our marriage began. My blood ran cold. He was erasing me. But then, I remembered something. Something from that honeymoon, a detail I hadn't thought about in years. I remembered standing on that balcony in room 1201, looking up. The hotel was built like a tiered wedding cake, and directly above our suite, taking up the entire top floor, was the penthouse. The celestial suite, they called it. We had joked about it, about how one day, for our 20th anniversary maybe, we'd be rich and successful enough to stay there. We'd look down on our little honeymoon balcony and laugh. Another broken promise, another dead dream, but the suite was still there, a real place. I opened my laptop, my fingers moving with a purpose I hadn't felt in days. I went to the Azure Vista's website. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. I navigated to the booking page. I selected the dates, this Wednesday to this Friday, 2 nights. Then I clicked on the room selection. The list popped up. Standard rooms, ocean view rooms, junior suites. Room 1201 was, of course, unavailable, and at the very top of the list in bold, elegant script was the name, the Celestial Suite. Penthouse. It was available. The price per night was staggering. It was more than our entire honeymoon had cost. It was a reckless, insane amount of money to spend. It was the kind of money Mark controlled, money he moved into accounts I couldn't access, money he called investment capital. But I had my own account. My rainy day fund, my grandmother had called it. An account he didn't know about, seeded with an inheritance she had left me and built up with small, secret contributions over the years. I never knew what I was saving it for. I just knew I needed to have something that was mine. Untouched by him. Was this the rainy day she was talking about? It felt more like a hurricane. I stared at the book now, but my mouse hovered over it. What was I even thinking? What would I do? Fly there, knock on their door and confront them? Make a scene in the lobby? No, that was his style. Melodramatic and cheap. This would be something else. Something quiet. Something for me. He thought I was at home, heartbroken and helpless. He thought I was waiting by the phone for his next lie. He was so confident in my passivity that he was flaunting his betrayal in the most sacred place he could find. He was looking down on the world from that balcony, but he wasn't at the top. I took a deep breath, the first real breath I'd taken in 3 days. The air filled my lungs and seemed to clear my head. The shame was still there. The hurt was still a raw, open wound. But that cold, quiet anger was growing. It was turning into resolve. He wanted to erase me. He wanted to replace me. He wanted to stand in our spot with his new woman and feel like a king. He had no idea I could build a castle right on top of his head. I looked from the booking screen to the photo of him and her laughing face, his smug, satisfied smile. Room 1201, a man with a plan. I smiled, a real smile this time. It felt strange on my face. You have no idea what a woman with a plan looks like, I whispered to the screen. I clicked the button. The confirmation page loaded. My reservation was complete. The celestial suite was mine. I wasn't going there for him. I wasn't going there for a confrontation. I was going there to remember who I was before I became his wife. I was going there to stand on a higher balcony, to breathe cleaner air, and to look at the same ocean he was looking at, not as a victim, but as the architect of my own escape. He had taken our past and tried to burn it to the ground. He thought all that was left was ashes. I realized he hadn't just stolen our past. He had given me a way to reclaim my future. The confirmation email arrived instantly, a sterile, black-and-white record of the most impulsive decision I had ever made. For a moment, my hand trembled over the trackpad, a wave of panic washing over me. The cost, the absurdity, the sheer, terrifying audacity of it. What was I doing? I closed my laptop and stood up, walking on unsteady legs to the window. The city lights below were a familiar, comforting blur. I had spent 5 years looking at that view, always with him, always as a part of a pair. Tonight, I was alone, and the view felt different, sharper. The panic subsided, replaced by the same cold resolve that had guided my fingers on the keyboard. This wasn't impulsive. It was a course correction. It was the first decision I had made in years that was entirely for me, not for us, not for his career. For me, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, a text from Mark. Finally done for the day. This deal is exhausting. Going to order room service and crash. Thinking of you. I looked at the message, and for the first time I felt nothing. No sting, no ache, just a profound, almost clinical detachment. The words were a script and he was a bad actor. I knew where he was, I knew who he was with, I knew he was probably ordering 2 of everything. I replied simply, "Get some rest." The lie was easy. It felt like putting on an old, familiar coat. I had been making myself smaller, more agreeable, for so long that the motions were second nature. The difference was, now I was aware of it. I was in control of the performance. The next morning, I didn't hide in the apartment. I got up, showered, and put on a crisp blazer and trousers, an outfit I hadn't worn in years from a life I'd left behind. It was my old armor from when I was a project manager, before I downshifted my career to support his. It still fit. I didn't call my mother or my best friend. Their sympathy would be a balm, but I didn't want to be soothed. I wanted to be focused. Instead, I made a different call. To a name I'd gotten from a college friend a year ago, filed away for a just-in-case that had felt, at the time, like an act of profound pessimism. A divorce attorney. One of the best in the city, known for being discreet and surgically precise. Her name was Evelyn Reed. Her assistant put me through immediately. Evelyn's voice was calm and low, with no trace of false pity. It was the voice of a woman who dealt in facts, not feelings. "How can I help you, Haley?" I took a breath and laid it all out. The 5 years of marriage, the slow erosion of my own identity, the anniversary, the photo, the hotel. Room 1201. I spoke without emotion, listing the events as if I were delivering a project update. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint scratch of a pen on paper. "He took her to your honeymoon suite, on your anniversary," Evelyn finally said. Her tone wasn't shocked, it was interested. The way a surgeon might be interested in a particularly unusual fracture. "Yes," I said. "And you have proof of his location and the companion. A screenshot. And her public social media has the hotel and room number tagged." "Good, that's very good," she said, a hint of steel in her voice. "Careless of him. Arrogant men often are. They believe their own narratives." She told me what to do next. The advice was cold, practical, and incredibly empowering. Don't confront him. Don't mention a single word. Act normal. Let him continue to believe you are the person he thinks you are. "While he's playing the part of a successful executive on a business trip," Evelyn said, "we will be quietly and efficiently dismantling the stage he's standing on." She instructed me to gather documents. Bank statements, tax returns, property deeds. Things I had access to, things I had co-signed without a second thought for years. She explained that Mark likely had accounts I didn't know about. Assets he'd been hiding. His casual disregard for my intelligence suggested he wouldn't have been very careful about covering his tracks. He sees you as part of the scenery, Haley, she concluded. Right now, that's your greatest strength. Use it. I hung up the phone feeling lighter than I had in years. The shame was gone. The hurt was still there, a deep bruise on my soul, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was fuel. My flight was the next day. I had less than 24 hours. I spent the afternoon in our home office, a room that had always felt more like his than ours. I opened the filing cabinet, the one he'd told me not to worry about, that he handled all the boring financial stuff. It wasn't boring. It was a roadmap to his deception. There were statements for credit cards in his name only, cards I'd never seen. The charges told a story of their own, jewelry stores I'd never been to, expensive dinners for two at restaurants he'd claimed he was going to with clients, hotel stays in our own city. The affair hadn't started last week. It had been going on for months, maybe longer. Each statement was another small betrayal, another confirmation that the man I married was a fiction. I didn't cry. I made copies. I scanned everything onto a thumb drive, which I then tucked into a hidden pocket in my purse. That evening, I packed. I opened my side of the closet. It was a sea of muted colors and comfortable fabrics. The wardrobe of a woman who didn't want to draw too much attention. The supportive wife. I pushed it all aside. In the back, stored in a garment bag, was the dress. The one I'd bought for our anniversary dinner. It was a deep, midnight blue silk, simple and elegant. When I tried it on, I'd imagined the look on Mark's face. Now I took it out and laid it carefully in my suitcase. I wasn't packing it for him. I was packing it for me. It was no longer a dress for a failed celebration. It was a dress for a coronation. The crowning of a queen who was finally taking back her own kingdom. I packed other things, too. A swimsuit he would have called too revealing. A novel he would have called too intellectual. The expensive perfume I loved, but that he said gave him a headache. Everything I packed was a small act of rebellion. A reclamation of the pieces of myself I had filed away to make him more comfortable. I left behind the jewelry he'd given me, the delicate necklace, the simple earrings. They felt like shackles. Instead, I packed a pair of bold, silver earrings my grandmother had left me. They felt like armor. My phone buzzed again. It was him. A photo this time. It was a picture of the ocean, taken from the balcony of room 1201. His feet were propped up on the railing. Another beautiful sunset, the caption read. Really wish you were here to see this. I looked at the photo of his feet. His expensive leather shoes. I imagined Sarah just out of frame, probably rubbing his shoulders. I imagined their laughter. My heart gave a painful thud, a ghost of the old hurt, but it was fainter this time. I was looking at the photo not as his wife, but as his adversary, and he was giving me intelligence. He was still there. The plan was still in motion. I typed back, "It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with me." The words tasted like ash, but I knew they were necessary. He needed to believe I was pining for him at home. He needed to be comfortable. He needed to be unprepared. The next day, I took a car to the airport. As the driver pulled away from our building, I didn't look back. There was nothing there for me anymore. The life I'd had in that apartment was a mirage. The airport was a blur of anonymous faces. For the first time, traveling alone felt like a luxury. I didn't have to worry about his schedule, his moods, his preference for the window seat. I bought a coffee and sat at the gate, watching the planes take off and land. Each one felt like a promise of escape. During the flight, I didn't watch a movie or listen to music. I stared out the window at the clouds, a vast, white landscape that stretched to the horizon. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't falling. I was flying. I thought about Mark and the woman in our room. I let myself imagine the details. The way he would order for her at dinner, trying to seem sophisticated. The way he would tell her stories about his work, inflating his own importance. The way he would lie to her, just as easily as he lied to me. I realized with a startling clarity that I didn't hate her. She was a symptom, not the disease. The disease was Mark, his ego, his bottomless need for validation, his belief that he was entitled to everything, and that the women in his life were merely accessories to his own story. She probably thought she was special, that she was the one who had finally captured the heart of this important, successful man. She had no idea she was just the next chapter in a very old, very predictable book. One day, he would get tired of her, too. He would find someone new, and she would be the wife at home, wondering why he was working so late. The thought didn't bring me comfort. It brought me a kind of sad, detached pity. We were both just objects to him. The only difference was that I was finally realizing it. When the plane landed, the warm, humid air of the coast hit me like a blanket. It was the same air I had breathed on my honeymoon, but it smelled different now. It smelled like freedom. A private car that I had arranged was waiting for me, not the standard hotel shuttle. A sleek, black sedan, a small upgrade, a gift to myself. The driver, a polite man with a quiet smile, took my single suitcase. "The Azure Vista, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes, thank you," I said, my voice steady. The drive along the coast was achingly familiar. Every curve in the road, every glimpse of the turquoise water brought back a ghost of a memory. Mark holding my hand in the back of a taxi. Me, resting my head on his shoulder, dizzy with love and hope. I had been so young, so trusting, I didn't push the memories away. I let them come and I observed them. They felt like scenes from a movie I had once seen, about a woman I used to know. They no longer had the power to hurt me. They were just data, pieces of a past I was about to rewrite. As we pulled into the long, palm-lined driveway of the Azure Vista, my heart began to pound. This was it, the scene of the crime. The lobby was just as I remembered it. Grand, airy, with a towering glass wall that looked out onto the ocean. The scent of salt and lilies filled the air. For a horrifying second, I felt a wave of nostalgia so powerful it almost buckled my knees. I saw us, our younger selves, walking through this lobby, hand in hand, laughing. I took a deep breath and forced the image away. I was not that girl anymore. I walked to the front desk, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. I kept my sunglasses on. A young, polished woman behind the counter gave me a professional smile. "Welcome to the Azure Vista. How may I help you?" "Checking in," I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "The name is Haley Jensen." She typed my name into her computer. Her perfectly manicured eyebrows shot up for a fraction of a second. She looked from her screen, to me, and back to her screen. The smile she gave me now was different. Wider, more impressed. "Of course, Miss Jensen, we've been expecting you. Welcome to the Celestial Suite." She spoke in a hushed, reverent tone. I realized that to the staff, I wasn't a betrayed wife. I was the mysterious, wealthy woman who had booked their most exclusive suite at the last minute. I was already a different person here. "We have your key cards right here," she said, placing 2 sleek gold cards on the counter. "A private elevator will take you directly to the penthouse floor. Is there anything at all we can get for you? A complimentary bottle of champagne is waiting for you in the suite, but perhaps you'd prefer something else." "The champagne is perfect, thank you," I said. As she finalized the check-in, my eyes drifted across the lobby. I saw couples holding hands, families laughing. And for a second, I imagined Mark and Sarah walking through here. Would they look happy? Would anyone be able to tell that their paradise was built on a foundation of lies? Probably not. They looked like any other couple, just like we had. The bellhop took my bag, and the concierge personally escorted me to a small, discreet elevator at the far end of the lobby. It had a single button with a small star etched into it. He used his own key to activate it. "Enjoy your stay, Miss Jensen," he said, with a deferential nod. The elevator doors slid shut, encasing me in a small, quiet world of polished wood and soft lighting. The ascent was smooth and silent. I watched the floor numbers light up. 5, 8, 10. It passed 12. I took a breath. I was now officially above him. The doors opened directly into a private foyer. It was larger than the first apartment Mark and I had shared. And beyond it, through an arched doorway, I could see the suite itself. It was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire living space, offering a 270-degree view of the ocean. The furnishings were elegant and understated, in shades of cream and soft blue. A grand piano stood in one corner. A bottle of champagne was chilling in a silver bucket next to 2 crystal flutes. It was a space designed for a life I had never imagined living, a life of quiet, unapologetic luxury. I walked slowly through the room, my fingers tracing the cool marble of a tabletop, the soft velvet of a chair. I felt like an actress who had just stepped onto her set. Then I saw the doors to the balcony. No, not a balcony. A terrace. It was enormous, wrapping around the corner of the building, furnished with comfortable-looking loungers and a small dining table. I slid the heavy glass door open and stepped outside. The air was warm, the sound of the waves a gentle, rhythmic hush. The view was staggering. It felt like I was floating between the sky and the sea. I walked to the edge and looked down. There it was, 2 floors below me, jutting out from the face of the building. The balcony of room 1201. Our balcony, it was empty right now. 2 chairs and a small table sat there, looking exactly as they had in my memories and exactly as they had in his photo. Tiny from this height, insignificant, I could see the entire layout of their suite from up here. A perspective no one was meant to have. He had brought her there to feel powerful. To stand on that balcony, looking out at the endless ocean and feel like the king of the world with his beautiful new queen at his side. He thought he had the best view in the house. He had no idea. I stayed there for a long time, just breathing. The anger I had been carrying for days began to dissolve, not into forgiveness, but into something else. A profound sense of scale. Down there was his small, sordid drama, his cheap lies and his predictable affair. Up here was my new reality, the clean air, the endless horizon, the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I was in control. He wasn't the main character in my story anymore. He was just a bit player in a small room 2 floors below me. That's when I realized I hadn't come here for revenge. I had come here to rise above it. I popped the cork on the complimentary champagne. The sound was a soft, satisfying thud that echoed in the cavernous living room. I poured a single glass, the bubbles fizzing eagerly, and walked back out onto the terrace. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in strokes of orange and violet. Down below, the lights of room 1201 were still off. They were probably out, having an early anniversary dinner at some expensive restaurant, creating new memories on top of the wreckage of ours. I took a sip of the champagne. It was crisp and cold and tasted of victory. Not a loud, triumphant victory, but a quiet, personal one. The simple act of being here, in this place, on my own terms, felt like the most profound rebellion. For the next hour, I didn't plot or plan. I just existed. I watched the sky change color. I listened to the waves. I felt the warm breeze on my skin. I let the silence of the penthouse wash over me, cleansing the noise and chaos of the past few days. I had spent 5 years accommodating Mark's tastes, his moods, his schedule. Tonight, there was only my own. I ran a bath in the enormous marble tub. It was big enough for 4 people, with jets and a view of the darkening sea. I poured in the fragrant bath, oils the hotel provided, and sank into the hot water, my champagne glass resting on the wide ledge beside me. I let my body relax for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. The tension in my shoulders, the knot in my stomach, it all began to slowly unwind. He thought I was at home, curled up on the sofa, weeping into a pillow. He pictured me as a pathetic creature, weak and dependent. That image of me was necessary for his narrative. It was what allowed him to feel no guilt. Lying there, surrounded by a luxury he couldn't even imagine I was capable of securing, I felt a strange sense of pity for him. His world was so small, his pleasure so cheap. He needed a mistress and a web of lies to feel powerful. All I needed was this, a room of my own, a view of the sea, the quiet strength of my own resolve. After my bath, I began to get ready, not for a confrontation, not for an audience, for myself. I did my hair and makeup with a care I hadn't taken in years. I put on the bold, silver earrings from my grandmother. They felt cool and heavy against my skin, like shields, and then I took out the dress. The midnight blue silk felt like water in my hands. I slipped it on. It fit perfectly. It was a dress made for a woman who was confident, who was comfortable in her own skin, who was not afraid to be seen. I looked at my reflection in the full-length mirror. I didn't see a victim. I didn't see a scorned wife. I saw Haley. A woman I vaguely remembered. A woman I was finally meeting again. I had a reservation for one at Etoile, the hotel's most exclusive restaurant. The kind of place Mark would have loved, for the prestige more than the food. I had made the reservation from the plane, another small, decisive act. Before I left the suite, I walked back out onto the terrace one last time. Down below, the lights in room 1201 were on now. The balcony door was open. I could see their silhouettes moving inside. A flicker of movement, a dance of shadows. I felt a ghost of a pang, a memory of pain, but it passed quickly. They were just 2 strangers in a room. Their story had nothing to do with me anymore. I took the private elevator down to the lobby level. When the doors opened, the familiar sounds of a busy hotel lobby washed over me, soft music, the murmur of conversation, the clinking of glasses from the bar. I walked through the crowd with my head held high. I could feel a few heads turn. I knew how it looked. A woman, alone in a beautiful dress, moving with a quiet purpose. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I wasn't looking for anyone. I was complete on my own. The mater at a toil greeted me with a polite, professional smile. "Good evening, madam. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," I said. "Jensen, a table for one." He glanced down at his book. "Ah, yes. Miss Jensen, right this way." He led me not to a small, forgotten table in the back, the kind they usually reserve for solo diners. He led me to one of the best tables in the house. A plush, velvet booth with a perfect, unobstructed view of the moonlit ocean. I slid into the booth and thanked him. He handed me the wine list, a heavy, leather-bound book. "Your server will be with you momentarily," he said, before retreating with a slight bow. I sat there for a moment, just taking it all in. The soft lighting, the quiet elegance of the room. The other diners, all couples or small groups, absorbed in their own worlds. I felt utterly, completely calm. I ordered a glass of wine, the most expensive one on the menu, and perused the dinner options. I chose the tasting menu, a long, indulgent affair. I was in no hurry. I had nowhere else to be. Halfway through my second course, the little sea scallops that melted on the tongue, I heard a familiar laugh. It was a high, slightly shrill sound. Sarah's laugh. I didn't look up immediately. My heart gave a single, hard thump against my ribs, an involuntary betrayal. I took a slow sip of my wine, my eyes fixed on the waves outside the window. I had prepared for this possibility. I had rehearsed this moment in my head. "Stay calm. You are in control." I slowly lifted my gaze and let it drift across the room. And there they were. They were being seated at a table not 20 feet from mine. Mark had his back to me, but I would know that posture anywhere. The confident set of his shoulders, the expensive suit. Sarah was facing my direction, smiling up at the waiter, her blonde hair catching the light. She was beautiful, in a generic, polished way. She looked like the kind of woman who had never known a day of real hardship in her life. Mark turned slightly to pull out her chair, and for a split second, his eyes scanned the room. Our gazes met. The universe seemed to hold its breath. His smile froze on his face. His eyes widened, first in disbelief, then in pure, unadulterated shock. It was as if he'd seen a ghost. His brain couldn't compute what he was seeing. Me, here, in this restaurant, looking like this, I didn't glare, I didn't smirk. I didn't give him any of the dramatic reactions he was probably expecting. I simply held his gaze for a beat, then gave him a small, polite, almost imperceptible nod. The kind of nod you would give a distant acquaintance. Then I looked away, back to the ocean, and took another bite of my scallop. I dismissed him. I could feel his eyes burning into the side of my head. I could feel his panic radiating across the room. The entire script for his secret little getaway had just been set on fire. A moment later, my phone, which I had placed screen down on the table, vibrated. I knew who it was. I didn't look at it. He would be scrambling, trying to come up with a lie big enough to cover this. What insane coincidence could explain my presence in this exact hotel on this exact night? I calmly finished my course. The waiter came and cleared my plate. I ordered another glass of wine. I did not look in their direction again. I could feel the disturbance in the force, though. Their conversation, which had been lively, was now a tense, whispered murmur. Sarah kept glancing over at me, a confused and suspicious look on her face. Mark was probably feeding her some story. An old colleague. A distant cousin. My phone vibrated again, and again. A rapid, frantic buzzing. I finally picked it up. 3 texts from him. "What are you doing here?" "Haley, answer me. Is that you?" "This isn't funny. What's going on?" I typed a single, simple reply. "I'm having dinner." I hit send and put the phone back down. Checkmate, what could he say to that? I had every right to be here. My response was not accusatory. It was a simple statement of fact, and in its simplicity, it was devastating. It offered no explanation. It gave him no emotional ammunition. The rest of my meal was a masterpiece of silent warfare. I savored every course. The delicate sea bass, the rich chocolate lava cake. I read a few pages of my book. I acted in every conceivable way, like a woman who was completely at ease, enjoying a solitary vacation. He, on the other hand, was a wreck. I could see him out of the corner of my eye. He barely touched his food. He kept checking his phone. He was trying to smile and engage with Sarah, but his movements were jerky and unnatural. The charming, powerful man she thought she was had vanished, replaced by a nervous, cornered animal. He couldn't confront me without revealing his own lies to his date. He couldn't ignore me because my very presence was a question he couldn't answer. He was trapped, utterly and completely trapped by his own deception. I signed the check, adding a generous tip, and stood up. I walked towards the exit, my path taking me directly past their table. This was the final test. As I approached, I kept my eyes forward. I could feel Sarah's hostile glare and Mark's terrified one. He looked up at me, his face pale, his mouth slightly open, as if he wanted to speak but had forgotten how. I walked past without a word, without a glance. As far as I was concerned, they weren't even there. Back in the elevator, the private one with the little star, I finally allowed myself to breathe. My legs were trembling slightly. It had taken every ounce of my strength to maintain that facade of serene indifference, but I had done it. When I stepped back into the celestial suite, it felt like a sanctuary. I kicked off my heels and walked out onto the terrace. Down below, the scene at their table had devolved. Sarah was gesturing angrily. Mark was trying to placate her. Even from this distance, the body language was clear. The perfect romantic evening was in ruins. Good. I stood there for a long time, letting the night air cool my flushed cheeks. I had faced him, I had seen him, and I had survived. More than that, I had won. Not by shouting or making a scene, but by simply being. By showing him that my world did not revolve around him. It didn't even include him anymore. My phone started ringing. His name flashed on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It rang again immediately. I declined the call. A new barrage of texts appeared. Haley, pick up the phone, we need to talk. I can explain. Where are you staying? Please just talk to me. Are you staying here, in this hotel? How? The questions were getting more desperate. His carefully constructed world was crumbling, and he didn't understand how. The wife he thought was safely tucked away at home had somehow materialized in the middle of his fantasy, holding a mirror up to his face. Then a new message. How did you pay for this? You can't afford a place like this. And there it was, the core of his panic. Control, money. He assumed I was his dependent, financially and emotionally. The thought of me operating outside of his control was, to him, impossible. That was the moment Evelyn's words came back to me. We will be quietly and efficiently dismantling the stage he's standing on. It was time for the final act. I didn't reply to his text. Instead, I sent a short, encrypted email to Evelyn. He's seen me. He's panicking. Is everything ready? Her reply came back less than a minute later. Ready when you are. The accounts are flagged. The transfer requests are submitted. All we need is his confirmation that he is where we think he is. I looked down at the balcony of room 1201. The lights were on. I knew he was in there, pacing like a caged tiger. I texted Evelyn again. He's here, proceed. The next 20 minutes were the quietest of my life. I sat on the plush sofa, the lights of the city spread out before me like a carpet of diamonds. I didn't feel anxious. I felt a sense of profound and final peace. The storm was about to break, but I was safely in the eye of it. My phone rang again. This time I answered. What did you do? He hissed. There was no pretense now. No, I can explain. Just raw, panicked fury. Hello, Mark, I said, my voice as calm as the still night air. My corporate card was just declined, he snarled. My personal account isn't working. What the hell did you do? I believe the term is asset protection, I replied coolly. Our lawyer advised me to secure my half of our marital property, given the circumstances. There was a choked silence on the other end. Our lawyer. What are you talking about? We don't have a lawyer. I do, I said. Her name is Evelyn Reed. She's very good. She'll be in touch with whomever you decide to retain. I could hear his ragged breathing. I could picture him, his face red, his mind racing and failing to find a way out. This is insane, Haley. You can't just take my money. It's not your money, Mark. It's our money, and I'm no longer willing to let you spend it on extracurriculars, like room 1201. That was the final blow, the confirmation that I knew everything, not just that he was here, but where he was and the significance of it. How? He stammered. How did you? You're careless, I said, echoing Evelyn's words. You thought I was stupid. You thought I would just sit at home and wait for you. You underestimated me." He was silent for a long moment. Then his voice changed, becoming low and dangerous. "Where are you, Haley? You're in this hotel. I'm going to find you." I smiled, a sad, final smile. "There's no need for that," I said softly. "Why don't you step out onto your balcony?" I heard the sound of the sliding door, the rush of the wind. I stood up and walked out onto my own terrace, my phone still pressed to my ear. I stood at the railing, looking down. He stepped out onto the balcony of room 1201. He looked around wildly, then his gaze traveled upwards. Up and up, past the other floors, until it landed on me, standing on the terrace of the celestial suite, the penthouse. His jaw literally dropped. He looked like he had been struck by lightning. He looked from me, to the vast expanse of the suite behind me, and back to me. The scale of it, the impossibility of it, was breaking his brain. He was the king of his small castle in room 1201. He had no idea there was a goddess in the heavens, looking down on him. "I'm in the celestial suite, Mark," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet night. "I'm looking down at our honeymoon balcony right now. It looks so small from up here." He just stared, speechless, defeated. "My lawyer's name is Evelyn Reed," I said, repeating the words like a final prayer. "Your lawyer can call her." "Goodbye, Mark." I hung up the phone before he could respond. Then I blocked his number. I stayed on the terrace, watching him. He stood there for a long time, a tiny, powerless figure, staring up at a life he couldn't touch, a woman he no longer knew. Eventually, he retreated back into his room, closing the door behind him. He had been vanquished, not by a battle, but by a change in perspective. I went back inside and poured another glass of champagne. The war was over. The next morning, I woke up to the sunrise. I had slept soundly, deeply, for the first time in years. There were no frantic calls, no angry texts, just silence. I spent the day at the hotel spa. I got a massage. I sat by the rooftop pool, a different pool, one reserved exclusively for penthouse guests. I read my book. I felt the sun on my skin. I felt peace. Late in the afternoon, I packed my single suitcase. I put the midnight blue dress carefully back into its garment bag. It was a memory now, not of a failed anniversary, but of a successful resurrection. I checked out as discreetly as I had checked in. The woman at the front desk gave me a knowing, respectful smile. "We hope you enjoyed your stay, Miss Jensen." "It was perfect," I said, and I meant it. The flight home felt different. I wasn't flying away from a problem. I was flying towards my future. I didn't go back to the apartment. I had arranged for movers, through Evelyn's office, to pack up my personal belongings. I was staying in a short-term luxury rental, a bright, modern place with no memories attached. A few days later, I sat in Evelyn's office. The divorce was proceeding smoothly. Mark's flagrant misuse of marital funds and his attempts to hide assets had made things very simple from a legal standpoint. I would be more than fine. "He's a broken man," Evelyn said, looking over a document. "His firm is reviewing his position after the corporate card incident. His girlfriend, Sarah, apparently left him that night at the hotel. It seems her affection was tied rather closely to his credit limit." I felt a brief flicker of something, but it wasn't satisfaction. It was just a quiet sadness for the mess he had made of his life. His betrayal hadn't just destroyed our marriage, it had destroyed him. That afternoon, I went back to the empty apartment one last time to pick up a few small things the movers had missed. The space felt cold and unfamiliar, a museum of a life that was no longer mine. On the kitchen counter, right where I had left it, was the anniversary card. "To the love of my life, Mark." I picked it up, the crisp envelope feeling foreign in my hands. For a moment, I thought about opening it, about rereading the hopeful, loving words I had written. But I didn't need to. I knew what it said. It was a letter from a woman who no longer existed to a man who never had. I walked over to the trash bin and dropped it inside, along with the keys to the apartment. I didn't look back as I closed the door for the last time. My revenge was never about destroying him. It was about rebuilding me. He had taken me to the lowest point in my life, to a place of utter humiliation. But from there, he had inadvertently given me the perfect view, a view of the way up. I stopped waiting for his apology because I realized peace was never his to give. It was mine. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a loud explosion, but the quiet, dignified click of a door closing on a life you've outgrown. If this story found you at the right time, Subscribe and join a community that understands that strength is often found in the silence that follows the storm.